All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Allie. I'm from the Education Department here at the Aquarium of the Pacific here in Long Beach, California. Welcome. We're going to be talking about whales today. I'm pretty sure everyone likes whales, but we're going to dive a little bit deeper into what makes a whale and about conservation. Now, we do have opportunities for you guys to participate out there at home. So if you would like to, you're more than welcome to text on in. Our number is right below, right here, 562 286 1838. But texting rates do apply, so please do ask parents permission. If you're watching this after live, or if on YouTube or anything like that, you guys can definitely email us at live@lbaop.org and we can answer your questions there. So actually, my friend Amanda is on the computer taking all your questions, all your comments, all your observations, and my friend Stacy is making the magical things appear right behind me. So we are going to get started and talk about some whales. Now, you have to kind of think, what do you know about whales? Well, they're marine mammals, right? So they're mammals, just like us, but they live in the ocean. Now, we're kind of just going to briefly go over those 5 characteristics that make a mammal a mammal. First of which, they breathe air. They have blowholes I'm not very good at, there we go, right on the top, right about here. They have blowholes right on top, and we'll get a little bit deeper into that as well. They also are warm-blooded. They keep a nice, warm, pretty steady body temperature throughout their whole lives. They also have live birth. They don't lay eggs. They have hair or fur, and you might be thinking, look at this whale. No way, there's no hair on there. We'll talk about that as well, where you might find that hair. And they nurse their young. That was our last one. And so, of course, they do nurse their young. Their mammary glands are right in the near the tail of the whale. So we'll talk about that as well. So again, those are the 5 things that make a mammal a mammal. But we're going to focus specifically on whales. Now, there are a couple different categories of whales. We have baleen whales, like this humpback whale behind me here. This humpback whale is a baleen whale. But we also have toothed whales. More commonly, we think of those, a really good example is a dolphin. Yeah, we never really consider dolphins as whales, but they are, and we'll learn a little bit about why. So let's start off with baleen whales. What exactly is a baleen whale? Have you guys heard that word before, baleen? It's actually what is inside of the whale's mouth. So, this is a great picture right here, Stacy. You can see this lovely baleen coming down from the top of their mouth here. Awesome. And it's actually almost like little hairs. It's like a giant mustache inside of your mouth. So let's go ahead and think about how they might feed. So these guys, what they do is they go underwater and they open up their mouths and take in thousands of gallons of water at a time. Oh, you can see a really nice picture here. And they have pleats underneath. Oh, here we go. That's a great video. I have not seen that one yet. So that's perfect. All of those pleats underneath the whale's mouth accommodate all of that water. They can take in thousands of gallons at one time. Now, we know that in the water, there's lots of stuff floating around in there, some of which can be krill or other plankton. And most of our baleen whales will love krill and plankton. Other whales, like this whale you see here, in addition to our humpback, will also eat small schooling fish. So they can open up their mouth, take in a whole bunch of water and krill and fish, and they can then close their mouth. But what are they going to do with all that water? They don't want to drink that seawater. So what they're going to do is they're actually going to push the water out of their mouth with their tongue. So you can see this great example right up here. They open up their mouth, take in hundreds of gallons, if not thousands of gallons of water, close their mouth, use their tongue to push that water out. All the water goes through the baleen and all the critters stay behind. Now, we got a really good shot of that baleen just a couple moments ago. It looks like a big mustache hanging down, as I mentioned. It's just on the roof of their mouth. You can see here. And it's made out of the same stuff that our hair and our fingernails is made out of. It's something called keratin. Now, I actually have some baleen with me right here. So let's go ahead and check this out. So this is baleen. This is actually from a humpback whale. So keep in mind, this is a small portion of their baleen. It's much larger than this. And you can see there are plates coming down. So they will have hundreds of plates coming down from the roof of their mouth. So when they take water in and they push the water out through these plates, all of the critters get trapped behind. Now we're going to go over to my document cam and we're going to look at this a little bit closer. So let's look at this just a little closer here. Ooh, a little closer was a lot closer. All right, so let's back up just a little bit. All right, so you might notice it looks kind of furry. It definitely feels that way to me. Have any of you helped make spaghetti before? To me, it kind of feels like uncooked spaghetti. So it's kind of thick. And again, you can see it's in these really hard plates. And again, as time goes on, it does separate into these smaller little pieces right over here. Now, a lot of baleen does look like this, but not all of it. So I mentioned that our humpback whale actually feeds out of the water column. Well, another one of my favorite whales actually is a baleen whale, but it does not feed out of the water column. It actually feeds on the floor, on the mud, on the sediment. And that's this whale right behind me here. So this is a gray whale. You might notice the gray coloration where it gets its name. Yes, this is a gray whale. They get to around 80,000 pounds. I didn't mention, actually, I forgot to mention how much a humpback weighs. They get to around a similar weight. However, they get a little bit longer. Now, they get to around 50 feet, or about 55 feet, whereas the gray whales get to just under about 50 feet. So the gray whales are just a little bit smaller, but about the same weight. Now, I do want to point out this little piece right here coming out of the gray whale mouth. It does look a little red. It might look a little alarming at first. Do not worry. That is actually kelp. That's kelp coming out of its mouth. So it probably tried to suck something up and a little bit of kelp is coming out. They're not the daintiest eaters, so it might just come out a little bit on the side. So if you were worried about that, do not worry. But let's go ahead and take a look at this baleen whale. What do you notice? What's similar about this whale compared to the humpback whale? Well, it definitely looks like it's coming up to the surface. And it's opening up their mouth, and they have this baleen right here. Does the baleen look the same? To me, it looks a little lighter. Does everyone agree? It looks a little bit lighter in coloration, and it's a little bit shorter. So I actually have some gray whale baleen. So let's head over to the document cam so we can check it out a little closer. All right, so here is our gray whale baleen. So you can see it's a lot lighter in coloration. Now, of course, it's not as big. This is just one single plate, whereas the humpback baleen we were looking at a moment ago, that had several plates. So it's not as thick in that way. However, if you look at these little hairs here, they are much thicker than our humpback whale. Now, this baleen is a little bit different because they feed much differently. So let's go back to our picture of a gray whale over here. All right, we're going to go back to our picture of a gray whale in just a moment. And of course, their baleen can be different depending on what they eat. Now, I mentioned that the humpback whale can open up its mouth in the water column and take in a whole bunch of water. Well, gray whales kind of eat similarly. However, they go down to the bottom of the ocean, kind of roll onto their side and scoop up a whole bunch of mud and sediment. They can then push that mud and sediment out, just like another whale might do with water, and all of the critters can get trapped behind. So You might see sometimes, I know we have a video somewhere of a whale, of a gray whale feeding, and you can see just a whole bunch of mud coming on up. Let's take a look at this. Let's make some observations. Oh, do you see all that mud coming out all over? Yes, that's when it kind of pushes that mud out to get all of its food. Now, they can actually eat a couple thousand pounds of food every single day. And we're really lucky here in Southern California because we do get to see these whales off of our coast. So if you have ever been on a whale watch, well, we actually assist a whale watching company out here in Long Beach called Harbor Breeze Cruises. So we're really lucky we get to go out and see these awesome whales. And we can see these pretty frequently off our coast because we get them as they migrate. Now, what is that word, migrate? You heard that word before? Sounds kind of familiar. Well, it's actually when an animal moves from one place to another. So most during, let's say the summertime, the water's nice and chilly up in Alaska, lots and lots of food. These whales love to be up there getting as much food, getting a nice blubber layer on so they can stay nice and warm. However, when they have their babies, they don't want their babies to be born in the really, really cold water. So what they do is they travel all the way from Alaska all the way down to Baja to have their young. So a whole bunch of gray whales come together. It's really, really awesome if you have the chance to see it. And their babies are then born down there. Now they can be about 1,500 pounds at birth. So they're still really big, not as big as these, of course, but it's awesome that we get them on their migration down and then on their way back up again to Alaska. So it's really interesting to see all the babies migrating back on up with their mothers. Now, I did want to point out, because this is a great picture, I did want to point out another difference between baleen whales and toothed whales. And that's actually pictured right about here. All right, so those blowholes. How many do you see? I see 2. Baleen whales have 2 blowholes. Whereas when we look at toothed whales in a little bit, you're going to notice that they just have 1. So that's a really great way to not even look in their mouth and know what kind of whale they are. And most of the time when you're out on a boat looking for whales, you might not have the opportunity to see into its mouth. So you can look on top of its head and you can count how many blowholes it is. Now, one of my favorite things about a gray whale is you can tell it's a gray whale from pretty far away because do you see how their blowholes are angled away from each other a little bit? Well, when they blow, that blow creates a heart-shaped. So you can actually see that heart shape from pretty far away. So that's a really unique characteristic about gray whales. Now, another thing you might notice about gray whales, all of these bumps. Do you see all of these bumps on them? Yeah, that's actually another animal or animals. These are barnacles. You might see all of the barnacles all over. It's a small little animal, almost looks like a little volcano of a shell, and it attaches itself down to the gray whale. And then on top of that, do you see this kind of orange? Almost yellowy orange. You might notice that, and that is because that is lice. They have sea lice all over them. So they are covered in a variety of things you might notice, but they can actually carry about 2,000 pounds of sea lice and barnacles on them at any given time. 2,000 pounds of all of this extra weight just carried on them. So pretty interesting to see because it does change as well as they either knock off or things maybe eat them off or they fall off. So it's an interesting way to kind of look at these whales. Now, we talked a little bit about baleen whales. Again, whales with baleen in their mouth They're typically the larger whales. An example that we looked at was the gray whale. We also talked a little bit about the humpback whale. However, we also have another grouping of whales that I mentioned in the beginning, and that was our toothed whales. So you can probably guess what's in their mouth. Tooth. Exactly. They are toothed whales. So I actually have a skull here that's really awesome to look at. And this is a bottlenose dolphin skull. You can see the bottlenose dolphin right behind me here. Now this is a bottlenose dolphin skull, and you can see all of their teeth on in here. They have lots of teeth, really great for catching slippery fish. They can feed on a variety of small schooling fish. Some of them will also eat some squid, but they're really great to kind of catch onto their prey or their food. You may also notice on top here, they have a single blowhole. Again, that's a really great way to know if it is a baleen whale or a toothed whale without even looking inside of their mouth, just a look on their head. Now, a really great adaptation that these whales have is they have something called echolocation. It's kind of a really big word, but I like to think of it, they can see what's around them without using their eyes. So how that works is they create sound in their melon. Now that melon is, I kind of think of it like a forehead. Does everyone see that kind of bump there? Yeah, that's a melon. And their melon is really, really fatty. So when they project sound out, it goes even farther. And it goes out into the water column. And those sound waves actually bounce off things that are around them. It could be each other or it could be food. And it can bounce off and come back to them. Now, when it comes on back to them, I'm going to grab the jaw one more time. We have our lower jaw. Well, that actually bounces to them and comes to their lower jaw. Now, what do you notice about the bottom of their jaw? It's hollow. Exactly. So that can actually come all the way through. It can move into this area here in their brain. And their brain does something really cool. It puts together a picture of what's around them. So they can see what's around them without using their eyes, which is a really, really awesome adaptation to maybe not only find their food, but maybe to avoid predators, maybe to find each other. So again, this is just one of the examples we have here off of our coast here in Southern California. This is our bottlenose dolphin. Now, bottlenose dolphins, they get to about 1,000 pounds and can get up to about 12 feet long. So they can get pretty big compared to some other species we have here off of our coast, and they're a really dark color. Now, you might notice some scratch marks. Does everyone see those little scratch marks there? Yeah, don't worry, those are okay. That's totally normal for a dolphin like this. Now, this whale here, again, they have teeth, so they scratch them against each other. They're a little mouthy with each other. Completely normal. Those are called rake marks. But there's another kind of dolphin or toothed whale that we have off of our coast here that you can really see their rake marks, and that is actually a rhesus dolphin. Now, those are one of my favorites. They're really unique to see. You can definitely see that they're a little different from others when you see them out in the water. So I want you to make some observations. What do you notice? Yes, a lot of scratch marks. A lot of scratch marks all over this whale here. So again, these are rhesus dolphins. We do see them pretty much throughout the year, but not all the time. So it's really exciting when we do see them. And you can see all of these scratch marks here. It's a really great indicator of a rhesus dolphin. Now, I do want to touch on a program that we have here at the Aquarium of the Pacific to actually identify individual animals. So I mentioned that we team with Harbor Breeze Cruises, and we go out into the ocean and we teach guests about whales, how to find them, what to look for, and information, of course, about the whale that we see. This is a blue whale blowing right here. Again, we're lucky to have those off of our coast too. But we are lucky enough to go out and we have a team here at the Aquarium of the Pacific that goes and takes hundreds of pictures of these whales. Now you might be thinking, well, why? Why does that matter? Why do we need to take pictures of these whales? Well, we actually do it to identify individuals. We work with Cascadia Research Collective, and we can actually input our pictures into a database. And we can actually track individuals. Now, some whales live a very long time, and I mentioned that word earlier, migration. They do move around. So it might not be the same whale you saw yesterday in the exact same place. But how would we know? Well, a really great thing to do is look for distinguishing markings. So let's look at our whale right here. Does there look to be any distinguishing markings you might look for? There's some distinguishing markings. There's a little bit of shading in here, a little bit of grooves, little spots that might be a little bit different. Oh, we have a question here. Maya just texted in, why are barnacles on whales? Well, that's a good question. They're easy to attach on, to move around. The whale's going through the water, and the barnacle can easily get a lot of food. So that's definitely one reason that they could hitch a ride on a whale. They can definitely move around a lot more than they would be normally. Good question, Maya. Thanks for texting in. Now we're going to go back over to our whale here that you might see. So we're looking for distinguishing characteristics of a whale. Now we can actually look for those distinguishing characteristics and match it against other pictures we have in our catalog. We can then say, hey, this looks a little similar. Maybe it's the same thing. However, it can be pretty tricky. So we're definitely going to try this out just a little bit here. So I want you to look at the dates above. So this is in 2012. And this one over here is in 2011. So they're about 1 year apart. A lot can happen to a whale in 1 year. Think about how much happens to you in 1 year. And you're definitely not staying in the same place. So we're looking for definitely distinguishing markings. However, when we take these photos, it needs to be from the same side as the other picture. Let's keep in mind lighting might be different. Or maybe the whale's moving a little bit. It's a little bit blurry. So I'm going to give you a chance. See if you see any markings on here that look similar. How can we know if this is the same whale? And everyone find something that looks a little similar, or maybe not similar? Well, let's go ahead and put up the two regions that we have circled here to see if they are similar or not. So let's see, this region right here, it almost looks like two little lines. Does everyone see that? And we can actually match it right over here. Yeah, then these spots are very distinct, and there's that dark area in the middle. You can see it matched up right over here. So it's a really great way that we can match and track whales. But now to the conservation portion of why we might track whales. I want you to think for a second, why might it be important? Well, whales are definitely an important part of our ecosystem, of our habitats, of our oceans, and they do move a lot. And not too long ago, they were actually hunted. So some of the whale populations went down pretty drastically. So for example, we monitor different populations to see how much their populations are going up, to see if they're a nice, healthy, stable population. Because these are now protected. So if you went out into the ocean, you do need to keep a certain distance from a whale because they are protected by the Marine Mammal Protection Act of 1972. Now that Marine Mammal Protection Act really helps out whales and other marine animals, marine mammals specifically, such as seals and sea lions, sea otters. These animals do really need our help because, again, they were hunted to in some individuals pretty close to extinction. So we are really lucky to have this program here that we can look over different populations of whales. Now, Kaya in San Pedro texted in, she wants to know how whales get water out of their blowhole. Kaya, that's a really good question. So let's kind of think about it. Let's pretend we are a whale. And we're going to take our nose and we're going to put it on top of our head. So it's a really great place to have your nose, because when you come up to the surface of the water, you don't have to completely tilt your face out of the water in order to breathe. So they come out to the surface of the water, and it's a very powerful exhale. If you ever have the chance, it's a really big whoo. You can hear it from pretty far away. It's very powerful. And it looks like water is shooting out of the whale. It's not exactly shooting out as we might think. Remember, we were talking about the feeding, how the tongue does the majority of the water pushing out through the baleen. Well, this water is just a little bit of water kind of sitting at the surface there that gets misted into the air. It's a very powerful exhale. So it's pretty much just like putting your nose on top of your head. Great question. And we're going to talk a little bit about, we talked about conservation of whales, but there is one animal in particular that really needs our help. Now, this animal is very dear to our hearts here at the Aquarium of the Pacific, and it is a small little porpoise, smaller than me. It's a small little porpoise called the Vaquita. Has anyone heard of the Vaquita? It's not talked about very much, but this is actually the most endangered marine mammal on the planet. There are approximately less than 20 of them left. So what exactly is happening? We have a lot of things in place, such as the Marine Mammal Protection Act of 1972, helping out our marine mammals. However, this is a little bit of a different situation. Now, these animals, they live in the Gulf of California off the coast of Mexico, and they live in a really small little location. And they are actually getting caught in gill nets. Now, gill nets are nets that stretch underwater, sometimes for miles, and they're pretty much invisible. So if you were a vaquita swimming along and you didn't see that net, you got caught in it, and you were stuck underwater, they can hold their breath for a certain amount of time, but there is an amount of time where they cannot get out and they can't get to the surface to breathe. So unfortunately, we are losing these vaquita pretty quickly. And about a couple years ago, we had about 60. Now we have less than 20. So we really do need everyone's help to really help protect this animal that we might lose within our lifetime. And we want to make sure we keep that biodiversity, these amazing animals. We want to keep them for everyone in that area, for that biodiversity there. So some things we can do, we really like to touch on, is sustainable seafood. I'm sure most of you like to eat seafood. That's okay. That's awesome. I know we're an aquarium, and we have lots of fish here, but seafood's great. It's a great source of protein for a lot of people around the world. However, there are different options of how it's caught. Now, gill nets might not be the best thing to support, because not only are they catching these amazing animals, but other ones as well, such as turtles, possibly sharks, and other fish that they did not mean to catch. So seafood that is sustainably caught is a really great option. But thank you so much for learning about whales with me today. Again, we talked a lot about toothed whales, we talked about baleen whales, and of course we talked about conservation, how we can help these animals, and especially the vaquita. But have a great rest of your day here. Have a wonderful afternoon, and we hope to see you again.